Hello, and welcome. This week we're doing paper marbling at home using the Japanese Suminagashi technique. Suminagashi means floating ink, so we place the ink on top of the surface of the water, then transfer the ink to paper, creating a unique print with beautiful marbled patterns. Today I will be using a container filled with an inch or so of water. I'll be using black Sumi ink, kind of calligraphy ink. I'll have a cup of water with just a drip of soap in it. I'll be using 2 paintbrushes. And I'll use a bunch of different types of paper to show you how the prints turn out on these various kinds of paper. Alright, so I am super excited to get started and show you what we have in store. I think that paper marbling and what we do here today is not only going to be fun for you, but it could be fun for your entire family. So, right before we get started, I'm going to run through my materials one more time. Starting with my water right here. As you can see, I've got a container filled with water, about an inch of water. And I also have a small container of water right next to it to show you that you can also do it in a tiny container. This is the ink that I'm using today. It is Sumi ink. It's for calligraphy, so if you have another calligraphy ink, that will work. Or if you do not have either one, then please see my acrylic paper marbling video, and hopefully you can get by with that. Okay. So right next to my ink, I have a little jar filled with water. See that? And I'm going to take my dish soap and I'm going to add just a drop into my water. I'm going to mix it in really well with a paintbrush. So we can think of the ink and the soapy water as black and white in my print. That the soap and the ink will not mix like water and oil, and they will be like black and white. Let me add a brush to my ink. And then let me run through my papers that I will be using today, because I'm going to use a few different kinds of paper just to see how it turns out. A few different kinds of sketchbook paper, varying weights. I will also use just a regular sheet of copy paper, as well as a piece of watercolor paper and a piece of printmaking paper. And all of those are sized so that they fit inside of my container. Before I start adding my ink to the water, I want to take a piece of scrap paper and skim the surface of that water to try to pick up any stuff that might be floating there. Anything that could cause an imperfection in my print or cause my ink to not flow nicely over the surface of the water. And then what you do not see off camera is that I have another bin filled with water that I'm going to wash or rinse my prints in. You can absolutely just run your prints under the faucet when you're done. Same deal, but I am using a bucket off screen so that I can do it right here and then return my prints to the rag so they can dry in front of the camera and you can see that. Alright, so I'm going to grab my brushes, one loaded with ink, the other loaded with the soapy water. And I'm going to begin my Suminagashi paper marbling print by very carefully touching the brush to the surface of the water. Now, because of the surface tension of the water, the ink spreads out over the surface rather than sinking, and you can see that the soap cuts through, making another circle. So I'm going to use this method to build up concentric circles of the black and the clear. Now, where my ink isn't spreading perfectly, that may be because there's something on the surface of my water that's creating a little force pushing back against my ink. But it's no big deal because all of these prints always turn out unique and they always turn out amazing. Even when something happens that I wasn't expecting, the print still always turns out just absolutely beautiful. So, uh, I feel like it's probably a good place to stop making these rings. Of course, you can always make as many rings as you like. You can go on endlessly. And I'm carefully returning my brushes to their containers. So I'm about to make my first print, and these are one-of-a-kind prints. So what you see in the water will turn out on your paper, and then that will be it. That will be the one-of-a-kind, and you will have to create something new for your next one. You can see that already my shape is morphing a little bit just from the little bit of wind that's making the water flow around. So I'm grabbing my first piece of paper. It is the thinnest piece of sketchbook paper, and I'm very carefully going to lay it down on top of the water. So you can see that it has a little bit of a bowed shape to it because I'm going to try to drop it from the center and then just let it ever so gently fall over the ink. I let it sit there, and then I slide it out of the water. I immediately take my print and I want to wash off all of that excess ink that's sitting on top because I don't want that to soak in or somehow muddy my print. So, rinse it off. Then I bring my print back over to my rag and show you how it turned out. And look at that, a successful print. Hey, where'd it go? Well, I'm gonna make a second design now, and you can see there's still some leftover excess from the other one swirling around, but that is gonna make, in my opinion, maybe the coolest part, that really nice marbled pattern. So I begin this one in the same way. I am alternating between using my brush loaded with ink and my brush that is loaded with soapy water. If you ever run into the problem where your ink, rather than floating on top of the surface, is instead sinking down into the water and mixing with the water, it could be because too much soap has fallen into your water, because soap can lower the surface tension of the water. So in that case, you may want to swap out and start with a new water. But as often as I can, I like to maintain using my same water because I really enjoy those patterns that are left over swirling around the outside from my last print. Alright, I'll call it for the rings. And for this second print, I'm going to use a different technique, and I'm going to blow onto the surface of the water to create ripples and disturb the rings. And if I blow straight down, I can sort of turn those rings into jagged lines. Alright, and now to capture this moment on a piece of paper, this time I'm going to use my next thickest grade of sketchbook paper. So it's not my nicest piece, but it's right in the middle. And again, I'm holding either side and trying to dip the middle down first, and then ever so gently just let that paper fall over the water. I let it soak in for just a few seconds, and I slide my paper out when I'm ready. Really quick, I am going to wash it off. Yeah, get rid of all of that excess ink because I don't want it to dry on the surface. Um, Woo! Look at that. It is a beautiful one. So there you have it, those jagged lines, and I'm blotting it dry with another rag now. There you go. And it's gone. So, I'm going to start another one right now. And on this one, I will show you yet another technique, another way that you can change your image and your design by disturbing the water. But I will begin it the same way by ever so gently touching the surface of the water with my brushes, taking turns between the black Sumi ink and the soapy water. And I just barely touch it to the surface so that that ink can travel over the surface. I don't want to dip any ink below. And I'm starting off pretty controlled, but if you guys look at the edge of my bin, you can see that stuff is just going haywire at the edge. And right there where I pointed, you can see there might be a little something right there that's preventing my ink from expanding right there. Maybe like a little piece of dust or something that has fallen onto the surface of my water. It's the things like that that you can't control that make each print unique and just a work of art that is unrecreatable. So I'm blowing to make those circles into jagged lines again. But then I'm also going to blow across the surface of the water to create a current, a directional current that's going to swirl my whole image around. And now it's sort of a waiting game once you've got that flow going to see when's the opportune moment when you want to dip your paper in and capture that moment. It's just looking for that balance of light and dark, and if you see any interesting shapes or patterns that you want to immortalize on your piece of paper. And for this one, I'm going to use my nicest piece of sketchbook paper. It's the heaviest weight. It's very thick and very absorbent, so it really takes that color nicely, and it ends up drying white. It's just from one of those black bound sketchbooks like Canson brand. And same as I did before, I want to try to gently lay my paper into the water. Once I've got it laying there, I let it soak in for a second. And then immediately when I take it out, I want to rinse off that excess water. So watch me slide it out. And as always, I want to rinse it off as quick as possible because I want to get that excess ink off. I don't want that ink to dry on there. And I'll bring it over for you to see how it turned out. Bam! Pipeline. Looks like a wave. Looks like a giant wave. Amazing.